Hi everyone, Gemma here, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be covering my top 10 tips for calligraphy beginners. I started learning calligraphy a couple of years ago and I know that calligraphy is both fun and sometimes challenging to learn, so I would like to share my top 10 tips that I think will make your learning experience easier. Before I get into the video, my channel covers calligraphy, bullet journaling and stationery reviews. If these are topics you're interested in, consider subscribing for similar future content. Right, tip number 1 is to learn the basic strokes first. I don't know if you know what the basic strokes are, but I actually have a video based on these, which I'll link down in the description if you want to check them out. Essentially, they're the movements you make with your brush pen that form the foundation of your calligraphy letters. You need to practice these quite a lot to be able to build them into your muscle memory, but once they're drilled into you, I promise things become so much easier. Tip number 2 is to not invest in expensive brush pens right away. When you're starting to learn brush calligraphy, part of the learning process involves knowing how much pressure to apply to your brush pens and also how to hold your brush pens correctly. Your brush pens will fray more quickly, so you therefore don't want to be buying more premium brush pens in the early stages of your learning. I'd also recommend smaller brush pens such as the Pentel Fude Touch for this reason, as they seem to be more durable and less likely to fray. On kind of a similar note, don't go for a more expensive brush pen brand just because you're seeing it pop up everywhere. There are lots of affordable brush pen options out there and you'll find your own preferences with time. Tip number 3 is to take Instagram with a big pinch of salt. Just like the rest of Instagram, calligraphy and lettering pictures are not exempt from lots of editing. What Instagram also doesn't show you is the amount of time it took to create that piece, how many tries it took, and also how long that artist has been learning their craft for. Now, Instagram is a great place for finding artists who have different styles that you love, but for starting out I recommend looking to gain inspiration from YouTube instead, as work is often accompanied by tutorials. Tip number 4 is to keep a folder of everything, even work you deem to be rubbish. I have a folder with calligraphy from when I started learning up until now, and I'm so glad that I kept my practice work. When you look back, you'll realise how much you've grown and how your calligraphy has improved, and this is one of the benefits of calligraphy, is that you can see your improvement in a really visual way. A tip within a tip is to date your work. Although I have a vague idea of when my previous work was made, I would have liked to have seen more of a detailed timeline of my progress. You might find that there's times where you feel like you're not progressing, and that's a perfect time for you to reflect on your progress so far by looking through a folder of your own work. Tip number 5 is to go slow. One of the most common pieces of feedback I give my students in my workshops is to slow down. And it seems like such a small thing, but it really does make a difference to the quality of your work. You might find your work shaky at first whilst you learn how to go slow. It's also worth knowing that a lot of videos of calligraphy you watch are probably sped up quite a lot, so it isn't always an accurate reflection of the speed you should be going. Tied in with this is taking your pen off the page after each stroke. It makes you think more about what you're doing and stops it from feeling like normal handwriting and more like drawing. Tip number 6 is a big one, and that's to participate within the lettering and calligraphy community. I'm part of a few Facebook groups centred around calligraphy, and the community is honestly so lovely. The people in these groups are kind and positive, but will also offer feedback to help you grow if you ask for it. One group I'm also part of offered a mentoring scheme where you get paired up with people with similar interests or specialities. I'll add a link to some of these groups if this is something you're interested in, but I definitely recommend it. Tip number 7 is to stay persistent. When learning calligraphy, your growth is most noticeable at the beginning, but once you've practiced a bit more, you might hit what feels like a bit of a wall. But don't feel that's where your ability ends. I remember feeling a bit frustrated at a lack of obvious growth, but you need to stay persistent, and I promise you'll get through it and start to see a noticeable difference again. Something that might help you break your wall is to draw out the alphabet in a style that feels most comfortable to you. Now go back through the alphabet and shake up your style, looking at each individual stroke and thinking if there's a different way to go about it. This will help you break you out of your comfort zone and with time help you get past that wall. Tip number 8 is to practice whenever and wherever you can. For example, I practice whilst I have the TV on in the background so that I can practice my calligraphy without it feeling like something extra that I just have to squeeze into my schedule. Instead, it goes side by side with what I'm already doing. I really wanted to avoid it feeling like a chore, so working it into my schedule in this way worked for me. Maybe have a think about your current schedule and when there are times that you can fit calligraphy in with your current activities. Tip number 9 is don't worry about flourishing yet. It's very easy to get intimidated by images of incredible, beautiful lettering with this impressive flourishing, and you really don't need to worry about that yet. Get your basic strokes and the alphabet nailed down first. Over time you'll realise you're drawn to certain styles of calligraphy, and if the styles that are drawing you in are ones with flourishing, then maybe consider learning it. Tip number 10 is to try a few different mediums if the first one doesn't quite fit. I was kindly gifted a beautiful dip pen set for my birthday a couple of years ago, and it re-sparked my love for calligraphy. I enjoyed learning something new, but I found it quite challenging and would always end up covered in ink for some reason. It also required much more focus, so it wasn't as easy to fit in with my current schedule. However, when I picked up a brush pen, it kind of just clicked and felt much more my style. Now, I'm not saying to give up on learning, persistence is key, but you might find that one just feels more your style over the other. So if you have both the time and the budget, why not give both a go and see which is more your style. Okay, so that's my top 10 calligraphy tips. If you have any tips you think I missed off, please comment them down below. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please drop it a like and consider subscribing for similar future content. And thank you for watching.